Let's take a problem. We say a copper container with volume 150 centimeters cubed is filled with olive oil. The temperature increases from 5 degrees Celsius to 22 degrees Celsius. How much oil spills? Well, if we look at our table, we can see that copper has an alpha value of 17 times 10 to the minus 6, and olive oil has a beta value of 0.68 times 10 to the minus third. Alright, so our copper, we can use the volume expansion equation that has alpha in it for copper. We can say that our change in volume is going to be 3 alpha, original volume, delta T, which is 3 times 17 times 10 to the minus 6, times our original volume, which is 150 centimeters cubed, and 100 centimeters in a meter, so we got to go times 100 cubed to get to, or divided by 100 cubed to get to meters. And our temperature change is just 17 degrees from 5 to 22. So our change in volume for our copper is 1.3, how many zeros? 005 times 10 to the minus, and let me count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's change in volume, meters cubed for the copper. Change in volume for the oil is equal to beta B naught delta T, which is 0.68 times 10 to the minus third. And then the rest is the same. So if we punch that all in, we get 0.68 times 10 carried minus 3. Okay. We get 1.734 times 10 to the minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 10 to the minus 6 meters cubed. So the oil changes volume more than the copper. My video seems to be freezing. Hopefully we can get through this. So the volume change of the oil was 1.734 times 10 to the minus 6 meters cubed. So the oil had a greater change in volume than the copper. The minus 6 is bigger than minus 7. So how much oil spills then was the original question. How much oil spills, and that would be the difference in the change in volume. Because if the oil, they started off having the same volume, so at the end, the oil's volume is somewhat bigger than the copper. So if we take the 1.734 times 10 to the minus 6 minus 1.3005 times 10 to the minus 7th, that is how much more the oil volume increased compared to the copper volume. And we can punch that in to get the amount of olive oil that spills is 1.60395 times 10 to the minus 6 meters cubed, which isn't a whole lot, which is why this isn't something that people usually care about. But for larger containers, it can be a bigger deal because the same fraction of the volume would spill, but it winds up being more stuff. I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about water. Now, water is weird. Above 4 degrees Celsius, it behaves pretty much normally in terms of thermal expansion and whatnot. If temperature increases, it expands. If temperature decreases, it contracts. But as it goes from 4 degrees Celsius to 0 degrees Celsius, the temperature is decreasing, but it actually expands. It becomes less dense. As you probably know from chemistry, the density of ice is lower than the density of water. Now this bizarre property of water, it allows northern lake ecosystems to actually function because as the water at the top cools from 4 degrees Celsius down to 0, it becomes less dense, and so it stays at the top. Normally, as water cools, it contracts, and so the water at the top would cool, and then because it contracts, it's denser, so it sinks to the bottom, and the warmer water comes to the top, then it cools, and it just kind of, the water just kind of cycles up and down. But once it gets down to 4 degrees Celsius, the water at the top starts expanding, and as it's expanding, its density is less, and so it stays at the top. And so there's a sheet of ice at the top of the lake. There's a sheet of ice, but then the water below stays water and pretty much stays at around 4 degrees Celsius. And so fish and other critters can live in these lakes below the ice, even even when it's really, really cold outside. So this just, as far as I'm concerned, this is just showing another way that God has created the world to function, to be able to continue functioning, that He has wisely created things in a way that works.